Nice. Haley Powers in the house, my friends. Eric Andreas, your Guitar Sage here for the guitar show. It's the 13th of August. It's really hot in Nashville.
It's very warm.
Haley, thank you so much for being here. We always love to have you.
I'm always so excited.
Yay. Friends, we're going to have a blast here today. We're going to be taking your questions live, of course. You know how this works. We're live on Instagram. We're live on YouTube. We're not live on Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg just doesn't allow it. So that's how it is. We can't post to both places. So yeah, there you go. So if you're on YouTube, you're in the right place. So we're going to be getting to your questions today. We're going to be talking about whatever it is, whatever questions that you have regarding theory, name it, what? Instagram, guitar players, jamming players, equipment, whatever, you name it, we're going to be answering questions today. And but specifically, we're going to be talking about multi-effects processors, right?
Ooh,
Because Haley recently got to noodle around with a Kemper amp, and that's my love here is a Kemper. That's my new love for maybe like the last year or so. And this thing is pretty amazing. A multi-effects processor is basically something that basically has all the effects into one box or one pedal as opposed to modularly. So right now I'm looking at Haley's setup here, and she has a separate wah and a separate delay and a separate reverb and what have you. And I have the same. I've got a pedal board that's the same thing. Hey guys, we're getting a little bit of echo in the, that's probably me somehow, huh? Okay. So you know, you have modular effects, which is basically rate single. You go out and you buy a wah pedal for $100 or $200, and then you buy something else for $100 or $200, and so on and so forth. It gets very expensive.
It does.
But the cool thing about it is, especially if you're playing live, right? You get to just like, you're like, that's not right. You get to reach down, change the knob, and boom, you're done. As opposed to a multi-effects processing unit, it's typically a little bit more involved. Like you usually will go into some sort of menu, or you'll have to be looking at a menu and pulling something up. So that's the downfall, I would say, to a multi-effects processor. What the Kemper does that is pretty unique is that it has lots of knobs and switches, or buttons I should say. It's got a couple switches, but mainly knobs and buttons. And what this allows you to do is it's almost like this hybrid between the two. It's still definitely a multi-effects processor, but it takes the part out of it that us guitar players don't like, which is I don't want to have to break open a manual and start digging and what have you. We just want to play, and that's the name of the game. So what the cool thing that I found about this Kemper amp, which it tends to be a little bit expensive, so I'm not pitching the Kemper, although if you have the money, go run out and get one right now because they're amazing. But I guess what I wanted to talk about today is multi-effects processors. I want to talk about this with Haley, and also just processors in general, effects. Okay, so we're going to be talking about all that. So Haley, do you mind if I kind of just show them this a little bit for a second? And then you jump in if there's any bits that you want to add to this, because I know you love effects, and I know you have a wealth of information there as well. So, all right, so let's take a look at this, and I'll just kind of go over some basics with you. So, you know, a lot of times people think that when you have something like this, or a pedal board, that you're running a ton of effects at once, and typically you're not. Usually you're just running 1 or 2, 3 maybe effects at the same time. You could run 10 or as many as you had effects banks, but most people don't play guitar that way just because it gets cluttered. A lot of times when people are new to effects, that's what they do, is they crank the reverb, they crank the delay and everything, and it just sounds very very spacious, and that can be good, right? That can be good at times, but then other times you want to just let the guitar do the talking. And so whatever the effects unit that you're using, just be wary of that, especially in the beginning, because you're going to have this feeling like, oh man, I haven't had this sound before, so I'm going to give it a lot. Don't do that. Just kind of listen to your favorite artists and what they're doing, and if it calls for lots of effects, then great. If it doesn't, then probably you don't want to do that, okay? So, you know, usually when you're playing at any level, at any genre, overdriven, clean, anything else, you almost always have some reverb, right? You always run reverb
I pretty much
all the
always
time.
have, yeah.
So I do the same thing. I mean, I never turn my reverb off. I don't know why I would. The reason that you wouldn't is that it creates this nice little space, okay? So you can hear that. If I were to turn the verb off here, and I'm sorry because I'm looking at a kind of a funky angle here, but if I were to turn the verb all the way down, it would sound like this. So completely blank. You might hear a little bit of reverb, and that's just naturally occurring in the studio space here because we have a much bigger space than we had before. So any little bit that you may hear is just the walls, okay? Basically what reverberation is, it's like delay, right? Except it's hitting like everything. It's hitting the cameras, it's hitting everything. And so it creates this kind of effect that just sounds like it's just fading away as opposed to echo, 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 that sort of thing. So that's no verb, no reverb. So typically, we're gonna have a little bit in there, like that. So you can hear it sounds like I'm in some, maybe like a hall or something. So if I crank that up, it's gonna sound bigger. If we wanted to do some surf guitar, that would work perfectly for that. Right? So typically you just want enough to sound like whoever you're emulating or to be that kind of vibe. Unless you're going for just a big hall sound, that's not, you know, you're always going to have some sort of verb on there, okay? Verb is what we call it for short, but reverb. You're almost always going to have some sort of obsession with some overdrives, right? Do you have a favorite overdrive, Haley?
Oh man, it
The full
like
drive is
changes
awesome.
all the time.
Yeah,
I
those
love
full drives
the
are
full
awesome.
drive.
Yeah.
I have this little
Full tone makes-
Sunbird now.
Okay, you like it?
I really like this one too, but
Yeah.
I have a lot that I just rotate through.
Right, yeah, they all, like, every overdrive pedal has some sort of little something that's different in them. And you know, a unit like this is going to emulate those effects as opposed to some of them might use a tube or some sort of transistor or something that would affect the tone, like this kind of raspy sound that you're hearing there. If you wanted a more aggressive sound, that's what we're talking about, right? As opposed to a cleaner sound. So that's overdrive or distortion. Fuzz is another version of that was made popular in the 60s and 70s, and it just sounds really, really hairy, right? It's just like zzz type of sound. See Smashing Pumpkins or Hendrix. Those guys use those a lot. So some sort of overdrive, you're almost always going to have that, even in that little funk jam there, where you were using some sort of drive, right?
Yeah, I was using 2 drives, stacked them.
Yeah, right? So like, if not, it's just going to be a completely clean sound. So in this case here, it might sound something, well, cool. Oh, good, the Kemper's not working maybe now. We'll see. Yeah, I can't adjust my gain. All right, well, we'll see. We'll see if the other stuff works. Glad this is not an ad for Kemper. So some sort of overdrive, you're always going to have that. Then you're going to have things like wahs, volume pedals, right? And a good multi-effects processing unit is going to put that stuff in the usual order that you would put the pedals if you had a pedal board. So do you follow any sort of protocol as far as your stacking your pedals?
Yeah, I do. I can't exactly remember what I have it right now at, but I've kind of changed it around. I think I use Strymon. They have like a really good resource guide of like signal chain type stuff.
Yeah.
So when I set it up, I've kind of like changed the order a little bit, but the order did actually matter a lot for how my effects sounded. So
yeah. Yeah, so there is an order, and usually, and this is just honestly just a rule of thumb, because there is no best when it comes to guitar, and there is no, you know, people are always looking for what's the best, what's the best, what's the best. Get that out of your vocabulary. We're talking about art. So similarly, if you were talking about painting, there's not a best color or a best brush. It's like they're tools to paint with. So get that really integrated into your thinking, and it's going to really serve you well because you're not going to be so stuck in a particular way. But that being said, there are some basic rules, and there are good reasons why one might do this, or maybe not, we'll call them not rules, but best practices. Usually you're going to put the wah and the volume right in the beginning. And the reason for that is overdrives prefer to have a wah before them as opposed to the wah being after them. The overdrive kind of affects the color of the wah sound. So typically you're going to put that stuff in the front. The way I usually do it on my boards are, volume, wah, or actually I've got one of those Clyde wahs that do both. So it's like whatever, if the one's on, then the other's off. And then straight into some overdrive. So that's usually where your overdrives and your fuzz pedals and all that stuff appear. And then usually after that section are things like, and people put them in different orders, but here's where things can be switched up a little bit, is you might find your delays and your modulations. So flangers, choruses, phasers, tremolo effect, those sorts of things called modulation. And then your time-based effects, which would be things like delay and reverb, but reverb is typically all the way at the end. And the reason that you want that is basically you want all the sound to be kind of summed down to your reverb to where it creates a nice, it's one sound. It's not like you've got, just trust me, just do it. We won't go into the
like
theory behind it, but basically it brings it all together. It makes it sound like it's all in one place as opposed to not doing that. So in this unit, we'll come back to the Kemper now. So basically the way this is set up, it's pretty similar in that you've got your overdrives typically in this section right here, and that's where you would have, your fuzz, distortion, all that good stuff. And from there you go into your EQ section, and then here you can see, well, you may not be able to see it, but it's like modulation, delay, and reverb. So I can literally assign these things individually to any one of these buttons here. So if, now I'm looking at my foot pedal. If I wanted to turn some delay on, which I had a little bit of delay on there earlier, what makes the Kemper really cool is that I can just tweak this immediately, just like I would a foot pedal, which some multi-effects processors, you don't get that luxury. You've got to go into a menu. So if I'm on stage and I want more reverb or I want more delay, boom, I can do it right here. Whereas sometimes in those multi-effects processors, although they're getting wise to this, the more knobs the better, the more buttons the better. It's not, you look at this, you might get overwhelmed thinking, oh my God, that's really complex. It's really not, because if you want reverb, then you go to this little section that says reverb, and all of these other things don't matter. They just don't matter. So in that case here, you're just adjusting the reverb. I think our Instagram feed just crashed, just fell down there. So that kind of gives you, an overview of multi-effects units. The thing is, they're all different, okay? So if you don't have a Kemper, it's going to be set up differently. And a lot of people will say, well, how do you come up with this sound? How do you come up with that sound? Just like you play guitar, you don't necessarily need a teacher, right? It's helpful if they can get you to where you want to get to quicker. But at the end of the day, if you noodle around with stuff enough, you can come up with the sounds that you're looking for. When I was a kid, oh my gosh, I had the crappiest amps and the crappiest guitars, and I figured out ways, I'd take like a radio speaker and plug it into my amp, which is, don't do that, because that's a good way to blow up your amp. But I had little amps and stuff I could do that. And just coming up with sound that way. Experiment, okay? That's the way to do it. And then listen, watch some tutorials of people with multi-effects units, and you'll get the knack of it, okay? All right, so that's our little bit there on multi-effects processor. You want a Kemper. Everybody does. They're really quite amazing. So yes, go run out and get one. And friends, if you're looking for kind of an introduction to effects, there is a line 6 pedal called an M5. Have you ever had this pedal?
I've never owned one. But.
Yeah, it's really the cheapest way, and it's great. It's not like cheap as in crappy. It's cheap as in affordable. About 120 bucks, and it literally has every effect under the sun that you could imagine. There's well over 100 effects in there. Yeah, you can only use one at a time, right? That's where it's cheaper, but it gives you a great introduction to all these different effects. So if you want to try some fuzz or you want to try some delay, multi-tap delay, reverb, you know, you've got it in there and you can noodle with it. And that's in fact what I did many years ago. I bought a Line 6 guitar and I bought a Multi-Effects processor unit, and I literally had all these different sounds that I wasn't privy to before, because I would have to have owned like 100-something pedals.
Yeah,
Just didn't have the
it's
money.
such a good way to experiment.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Like, I used to have the Boss ME80, and it was kind of nice because, like, in the beginning when I didn't have that much money for guitar pedals or anything, I didn't really know what anything was. It was a good way to, like, noodle through the effects, and, like, I think hands-on trying them is, and, like, actually hearing, like, this is how it sounds is way easier than just knowing, like, oh, here's exactly what this effect is supposed to do, and like mentally knowing what it is, but not really getting the vibe of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's comparable to describing what chocolate tastes like as opposed to just tasting chocolate. So if you're messing around with a delay unit or a wah-wah pedal, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to someone telling you about it, it's just kind of harder to get the concept, right?
Yeah, that was my take on the Kemper as well. Like, I first tried the Kemper, like, I guess like 2 weeks ago, and I was super intimidated by it because I was like, this looks like a robot. There's all these buttons. Like, what if I can't figure it out? So if you're thinking about switching to multi-effects, like, it actually was way easier and everything's labeled. So it wasn't as intimidating as I thought, and it's really pretty easy to make it sound really good. As opposed to pedals, I do feel like you have to tweak sometimes a bit more.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And Justin Sanderco had a funny meme the other day. It was like, I forgot what the face was, but it was basically this guy that was just pissed because he's like, he had to put another pedal on his pedal board, and he was like, oh my God. Because there's always that dilemma, right?
Oh,
You're like,
yes.
where's it going to
go?
Which pedal's leaving?
Oh man, I'm like,
how can I make it work? And you see some of these players where the pedals are just like,
I know,
all cattywampus
puzzled in there.
Yeah.
It like stresses me out.
It's like Tetris.
Yeah, man, I think I might switch though, maybe sometime soon, to a multi-effects thing, because like I've had so many issues that like one patch cable's wrong and or like it's going bad, and you'll be playing somewhere and then everything's wrong and you have to go through it and you're like trying to fix it, whereas, you know, it's just all like together. So that's really nice about it.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And you know, and if you're looking at doing a floor effects, you know, you're looking at doing individual modular pedals. Another way that you can do it is with a looper. And when I say a looper, I don't mean a looper like we usually use here, where we're looping music. Although those are cool, and we all have those, love those. Those are a lot of fun. But what I mean is, there is basically a pedal that allows you to wire the pedals into it, and then they're always on, but then you click on each individual one to bring it into the mix. So when you click it off, it literally mechanically takes it out of the mix. So you could have 40 pedals, but you could be bringing in these pedals individually one at a time with this unit. Usually not 40 pedals, but I think I might have like 13 on mine. Yeah, I think I might have like 13 on mine. And so, and those are really, really cool, but that in and of itself is kind of an expensive piece, but it can be done, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Haley, would you like to get to some questions?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. So, friends, again, you know how this works. And do we have Haley's credentials for? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, thanks, guys. There you go. Haley Powers Music. Make sure you check Haley out, because she's a badass guitar player, super fun, has really cool posts, and yeah, support her. All right, check her stuff out. And do you have a course coming out soon, or do you have a course already?
I do. I'm working. I actually took my courses down because I'm kind of redoing them. But I'm about to come out with just a beginner guitar course. That's just super simple.
Beautiful.
So
love it. Love it. And the cool thing is everybody starts at the beginning, so
exactly.
That should be for everybody.
Building my way up.
Yeah, love it. All right, so here we go. All right, and friends, if you would, make sure that you are doing all caps. And then also, if you would, put a question mark. Yeah, thanks. Okay, Mickey Johnson saying, I have a Boss GT3, but I can't figure out how to program it. Also, does it hurt to run it through the front of my amp through the guitar input? No, that's usually the way you would do it, Mickey, is like literally you plug your guitar into it and then out and then straight into the front of your amp. That's kind of like the easiest way to do it. Obviously, you can use well, maybe not obviously, because this is something I discovered years later, is the effects loop, right? And that can clean your sound up some. Basically, an effects loop is some amps, not many, but some amps, the higher end amps will have what's called an effects loop, and it allows you to put the effects at a different part of the chain. And what we mean by the chain is, there's your guitar, and then there's the cable, and it goes into whatever you're plugging it into first, a wah pedal or a volume pedal. This is all considered the chain. And then if it goes into an amp, that's part of the chain. If it goes into effects before that, it's part of the chain. But in this case, with an effects loop, basically what you're doing is you're plugging your guitar into the amp. So you're getting that solid tone that a lot of people lose when they're plugging into a bunch of effects and a bunch of cables and that sort of thing. So it gives you that solid, nice, direct, what we call direct sound, and then the effects are happening after, in between the preamp and the post-amp section, if I recall correctly. So that cleans up the sound. Your effects will tend to be more dynamic, and then also you're not doing certain things with effects that you'll run into if you're just plugging straight into the front. Now, that being said, there's a ton of pros that plug straight into the front of that amp, so don't feel like, oh God, I gotta go get an amp with an effects loop. It's not like that. It's just a different way. Some people can't hear the differences. I don't feel like I'm somebody who is very, I don't know, intuitive or can hear stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
it's
I
hard
definitely
to remember the differences.
Yeah, but I definitely could hear a difference when I did that with my Black Star amp. I could 100% hear a difference in the effects. But that was just me, so I don't know. All right, good. All right, and friends, any questions that you have, doesn't have to be obviously from me. Haley's here. You can ask me questions anytime. So check out Haley's stuff and then come on back and ask her some questions. Okay, and the unit that we're using is a Kemper. They have a floor unit that just came out as well that's probably an answer to the Helix, which I see someone's talking about here. I'm thinking about the Helix floor route instead of the Kemper. And bam, I am a big fan of Line 6 stuff. I've used it for the longest time, and I'll have to say that I did not use the Helix. I have played through them. I've messed with them before, but when I started playing around with the Kemper, I fell in love. I mean, it was absolutely just a different experience. And I've owned tons. I've owned every Line 6 effect pretty much that they put out in regards to floor units up until the Helix, and that's when I switched to Kemper.
Wow.
So yeah, whatever that means, one person's opinion. doesn't mean it's right. Do I have any experience with the rolling? Oh, hey friends, look at that. Someone just donated, which by the way, we haven't done that in a long time. We've been missing out on some of these live broadcasts because we've been in the new studio. Do you like the new studio?
It's amazing.
Isn't it so
it's
fun?
very fancy.
Right, so fun. But somebody just donated to the Super Chat, which, friends, if you don't know what that is, you better, because head over to, if you're not in the chat right now, if you're on Instagram or whatever, head over to YouTube, because you can actually donate there, and we're going to go to lunch afterwards. We're going to take Haley out for lunch because she's so sweet and comes here and rocks it and takes time out of her day. So we're going to do that. So that's where that money would go today, is directly to our lunch fund. And I know this avatar. Who is this? Subskip, of course. Subskip, thank you so much, my friend. Question for both. Other than not practicing enough, and by the way, when you do these super chats, they get your question popped to the top, you know. Other than not practicing enough, do you have any things you wish you would have done differently along your journey? Love that question.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Love that question. Haley, how long have you been playing?
I've been playing like 16 years.
16 years. Okay, beautiful. So
yeah,
that's a long time, and you probably have some things. I know I do. I've got tons of stuff. In fact, I have a video that's going to be coming out here soon that's going to talk about that. So what do you say about that?
Oh man, I have so many things I wish I would have done differently. Okay, I think the first one, I wish that I would have like started playing with other people sooner. I think I had a lot of fears that like, oh, I'm not good enough, or if I just get to this next level, then I can start asking people to jam or play in a band. And I wish I honestly would have just gone for it and not been so worried about like dragging a band down or something. Cause like, I feel like when I started playing with other people, that got me a lot better and like got my timing better and makes you really like learn a full song in the parts as opposed to just like the fun parts of the lick or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's one. I also wish that I would have focused on my form a bit more. Like, I think I had a bit of sloppy form in the beginning. I'm still working now on like reversing some of my bad habits. Like, for example, like I feel like I really kind of pressed with like the side of my finger. I know we're getting like technical here, but I wish I would have like learned to like bubble my fingers more and had just better form in general.
Would you say bubble? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like kind of like curving my fingers around so like the string's really hitting the pad of my finger rather than the side, making it easier to like slip off or like accidentally hit other notes, as well as learn to like palm mute so my right hand wasn't accidentally hitting other notes a lot.
Yeah.
So those were just some for me.
I love that. Well, the first one that you mentioned was one of the bits that I mentioned as well, as playing with others. And we had Jeff Duke in the studio the other day. Have you met Jeff yet?
No, I haven't.
Super cool guy. He's at Rumble Seat, long-haired dude. Looks like Johnny Depp. Super cool.
Oh
Great guitar player. But we were talking about it because he's just such a humble guy. And in Nashville, I think most people are pretty humble, but every now and then you run into someone who's like, I'm an amazing guitar player. And so and it's like, okay, that's great.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm not. But you know, it's like he summed it up really, really great. He's just like, just play music. Don't play your guitar, play music. And I thought that was really cool. It's just, you know, you do what you can. The only instance where it may not be cool is if you're not practicing and the band is practicing and you're not doing your part. Then yes, you should feel ashamed and you should play with a band that's lesser, because that's not cool, right? So I've played in bands like that where the drummer's like, oh man, metronomes? No man, they mess up my feel.
Yeah.
Like, you're a drummer.
It's like, is it laziness or is it...
It messes up your feel of playing.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. We got another donation here to Subskip. So, and I will get to that question in just one moment. Let me finish up with Subskip. So some of the other things that I mentioned is that in the beginning I did a lot of running through my scales. So literally just we're trying to work on speed, which there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a great thing to do. But what I find that's not so good is that it's time that you're spending doing other things. Okay, so or it's time that you're spending that you could be doing other things. So to me, running through scales would be, if you wanted to be an eloquent speaker, unlike I am. If you wanted to be an eloquent speaker, you might, that would be akin to reading the dictionary or reading the same words over and over and over again. That's not how you speak eloquently, right? That's not how you speak by moving people. You do it with emotion, you do it with checking your facts out and having outlines and all the rest. So that's how you properly do that. So to me, one of the biggest things that I wish that I could have undone is practice those scales over and over and over again. What I should have been doing is improvising to music. And I did some of that, but I would have done all of that, because at the end of the day, no one cares how fast you can play your scales. I don't. I just honestly, and most guitar players just don't care. Mm-hmm. What they do care about is, can you play a cool lick? That'd be fun, you know, or play something that moves somebody. At the end of the day, that's what music's supposed to do. So that was one of the bigger things for me. And then also, playing with other people. Gosh, I'm trying to think the other ones off the top of my head. But nonetheless, yeah, I definitely have some regrets. I think even practicing more than I had would have been one.
Yeah.
So David's saying, what are your thoughts on using a phone interface such as iRig for modeling? Have you used those before?
I haven't. I've heard people mention that though, but I haven't tried
it. Yeah, so I've used the iRig, and I've used the Line 6 version of that, which is, I forgot the name of it, but Line 6 has a kind of more professional version of that has microphone, stereo mic built in and stuff like that, and it's really cool. So I think it's great, and it's probably the most affordable way and convenient way for you to have hundreds of effects, or at least 100 plus effects, and to do it very cheaply, right? So basically what David's talking about there, and David, thank you so much for the donation. I truly appreciate that. Our stomachs appreciate that. Thank you. So a phone, basically an interface, is something that you plug your guitar cable into that takes the information, in this case voltage from your guitar, real light voltage, that runs through the wire that your amp knows what to do with, but your iPhone is like, how are you doing? Right? It doesn't know what to do with that. So it needs something to process that, and what it does is it converts it from analog to digital, something that the phone's like, okay, I know what to do with this, and now you have basically your phone, your guitar is plugged into the interface, which is plugged into the phone, and you can pull up apps, and you can literally hear your guitar through your phone running through different amps and stuff like that, effects, all. You put on your headphones and it just sounds like you are, in an arena. It's amazing. So if you haven't done that before, it's a great
really cool.
kind of, dip your foot into the pond sort of thing. iRig, and I think iRig may be made by PV? I don't know. I've had the PV version, I've had the Line 6 version, and I've had the iRig, whatever that is. I think that may be PV. So, great question. Wow, look at the kids today. They are just like, you guys are going to eat. That's what they're saying. Thank you so much. I'm getting a little bit of delay in what I can see here, so I'm sorry if I can't see it right away, friends, but I'll let you know as soon as it pops up on the screen, and then I'll get to that question. Okay, there we go. There's Ben. Ben did that. Great. Eric, do you have any advice on slide? Okay, so let's talk about it. So the cool thing is I know a bit about slide, but I don't know as much as others about slide, which is why I like to get a good slide player in here, like RJ Ronquillo. And RJ actually just did a course here at the studio, and we're going to be talking to you about that soon. Yeah, it's done, but we've got other stuff that we got to do yet. So more on that later. Is RJ in the studio next week?
Next week.
Next week. Okay, so you want to see a badass slide player, be here next week. RJ will be here, and hopefully we can get him to play some slide. Okay, so any advice on slide? The only advice I can give you is the same advice that RJ is going to give you, except he's a lot better of a player. But the basics are, he plays with his pinky, I play with my third finger, and you'll see people doing all. And so it depends on what you want. If you have it on the third or fourth finger, RJ's reason is that he can fret these chords and then do his slide, right? And he'll switch back and forth between the two and does it seamlessly, and it looks amazing. And that was kind of my reason for going with the third finger, was that I could still play the chords, but that I would have more of a reach should I need it. There's not one that's more right than another. You'll find all the amazing players doing different things. Usually not so much the second finger, not so much the first, although there's a few people that do that. For the same reason, is you want to chord stuff, and then also you want to have some finger, at least one finger behind the slide to help with muting. And then when you are plucking, you want to also, that's absolutely terrible. I'm just not a slide player. What you want to do is typically use your hand instead of a pick. You want to use your fingers, because if not, you're going to have this kind of sound. You got strings meshing into each other. You probably would never use delay with that either. And so allowing your hands to mute the strings while you're using the slide is very, very useful. Okay, if you're in the Unstoppable Guitar System, I have some videos on that, but those are going to go away and be replaced with this amazing course that RJ did. So all that being said, be looking out for that course coming out soon. Okay, and we might give you some insider information next week, but definitely be here for RJ because he's a badass slide player. Okay, So you are saying that one needs a multi-effects pedal and a looper pedal, Gary is saying. So no, what I'm saying is a multi-effects processor, or like what Haley has, which is a modular board where you're buying effects one at a time. That's a great way to do it, especially if you don't have, you know, a few $100 right away to drop. But I mean, you'll go into the best studios and see guys and gals with a foot pedal board like this, where they're literally just one pedal at a time. You may see 3 there, you may see 20. So that. Thank you, GW, just because you do what you do. Thank you so much, my friend. So kind. So what I'm saying is a multi-effects processor unit does what it does. It's basically all the effects built into one. You kind of do have to do more programming, get into menus and stuff. That's the difference between modular, I'm calling that modular, a pedal board, versus a multi-effects pedal board. And a looper pedal, there's a couple different types. There's the one where you get to play the guitar and then it just loops what you do, right? And then there is a looper pedal that is kind of high-end for like a lot of studio players, a lot of live players will use them. They're expensive. The one I bought was, so there's no effects in it, and that thing was like $1,300. It's literally just like a box with switches on it, and you route your pedals in it. So if you have 13 pedals, you don't have to be running through all of them at once. You can bring them in one at a time. You can do some really cool stuff with it. But the one that I use is called the Gig-Rig, G-I-G-R-I-G.
I'm about to get
Gig-Rig.
one of those, like
Are
a
you
switcher
really?
looper.
Yeah. What are
just
you going to get? Because there's a few different ones that are out there.
know.
I think the Gig-Rig is overpriced, but the reason that I went with it is because I just saw the guys from Radiohead using it, and a couple people that I really dig. But at the end of the day,
it's so hard to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking. I think by Electro Harmonics, they
Yeah.
might have one, and that one was like 500.
well,
so
I mean,
it
that's a
wasn't-
great name, Electro Harmonics.
Yeah, so I was like, that's pretty good. But yeah, with all the like cable stuff and like random things going wrong, I was like, I need to just upgrade this. It's going to make it so much cleaner.
Yeah.
Just to plug everything straight into that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and also what Haley was talking about, talking about signal chain, right? Her guitar's plugged into one pedal, there's a cable going from that pedal to another, and so on and so forth. So right now I'm looking at 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pedals. So you're looking at 9 wires, and the one going in, one going to the amp. So you're looking at like 10 or 11 places where there could be a problem. So if a mouse gets in and chews a cable,
Yep.
the whole thing is screwed. Whereas with the looper, what you can do is you can, if you find that effect has a problem, you can just like take it out of the loop. You don't have it to use, but
So
you could take it out of the loop. And I have run into that on stage where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
crap. That's not going to work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My tuner the other day, just like the middle like button of it, I pressed it and it just like sprung out of there, and I was like, all right, and it messed up everything, and it was like 2 minutes before the show started. So that was the point. I was like, all right, I need to change this.
Yeah, got to keep your head cool. But that, I've had stuff like that happen right before.
Yeah, it's always right before.
No. Oh yeah. Okay, processor, not pedal. All right. Would you say that knowing the open string notes, E, A, D, G, B, E, and knowing how to navigate through them, let it be, I'll explain that in a minute, is the base to better soloing? Heck, E is asking. So the way that I teach the notes on the fretboard is learn your open strings. You probably do something similar, right? You know your open strings. You know that the alphabet goes from A to G. There's no H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. And that every note has a B, that every note has a sharp except for B and E. And I always say, just remember, let it be. B and E don't have sharps. So that means if you go through the alphabet, it's A sharp, B goes straight to C sharp, D sharp, E doesn't have a sharp, right? B and E don't have a sharp, so E goes straight to F sharp, G sharp, and then we're back to the beginning again. That's called the chromatic scale, chroma meaning color, and scale meaning notes. I don't know what scale means. I just know what they are, what they do. And so the chromatic scale is all the notes, and then it starts over again. So Hecky is asking, is that the base to better soloing is to know the neck and to know those notes. And heck, E, I would say that's one of about 100 different things that would be helpful, you know, to know as far as soloing. It's helpful. Honestly, you cannot know any of that. Start with your pentatonic scale and literally could play the rest of your life as long as you knew what key you were playing in. And that, with what you're saying, you'd have to have some sort of idea, or just use your ear and finally find the key. That's what I did as a kid. I just find the key, and then I'd be like, okay, this is the key I'm in, and using that scale. So, so it's one part of several things that you could be doing. Do you have any words of wisdom there, Haley, as far as like, you know, navigating the fretboard or better soloing, like anything that you can think of that you're like, man, when I discovered this, it opened up everything.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say like just knowing even just the notes on your low E string and your A are really helpful, especially because then you have a starting point for your bar chords and to like kind of know where to start the solos. But like kind of like what you were saying, when I was first starting, I really just knew the blues scale and then knew that if I had it, for example, if I was playing an A, if I was playing it like this way, then it would be minor. And then if I was shifting it down 4, then it would be major. And that's where I started. And then from there, just filling up the licks was really helpful because like a lot of times if you just have even 2 notes and are playing around with really crazy timing that kind of surprises people or just makes your ear think like, oh, this is something different, then you can create really fun melodies without having to have all this technical knowledge. You can kind of have that just memory of where those notes are a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. There are a motif is a musical idea, so like anything about music that you love is built on motifs. So it just like means it's a musical phrase like da 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 da, you know, or you know, Crazy Train or whatever, just like whatever, it's a riff or a lick, but they're called motifs, and you can create motifs through melodies, and you can also do it through rhythms. So in that case, if you know what Haley's saying is if you just took a couple notes and you were making them sound really funky, you know, so in that case here, I'm just taking 2 notes, right? You know, I threw one note, another note in there, but essentially we're not doing much with it other than just kind of creating a cool little vibe there, as opposed to going. It's a little less busy, it's a little less interesting than the first thing that I did, right? And there's a place for both of those, but creating motifs, that would be the number one thing I would say to do when you're playing is, you know, if you're here on the neck, you're here on the neck. Just like I always talk about, you know, wherever you are, be there. You know, if you're playing with your kid, you're playing with your kid. If you're playing guitar, you're playing guitar. If you're at work, you're at work. And be there in the moment. There's so much to gain from that in life. And same thing when you're playing. If you're in one part of the neck, don't be worrying over here about here, unless you're going to end up there, and then you may figure out some way to do that. But if you're just sitting there noodling, just be where you're at and work with what you have and create moments out of the smallest little things, because then later on as you gain more knowledge, then it'll even sound cooler when you can do more with the big stuff. But if you can't make it sing with the small stuff, with the real simple melodies and simple chord progressions and everything else, chances are complicating it is not going to help you out. When I say chances are, it's just not going to help you out.
It just won't.
Yeah, I compare it to juggling. You know, I say all the time, if you're having a problem juggling 3 balls, then adding a 4th probably isn't going to help you. You know, it's going to help you the same way that complicating things would be playing guitar. So TC, thank you so much for a donation there. So appreciate that super chat. So friends, TC is saying I have an OCD, which is one of my favorite pedals, a Tube Screamer, which is another one of my favorite, a DD3 per your pedal video. It excels at high volume but lackluster on low volume. Does the Kemper fix that? You know, the Kemper might be able to fix that, but more than fixing it, it's kind of like whatever your setup is, you probably could fix it with your setup as well. That being said, do you experience this, Haley, where your sound at a certain volume sounds way better than at a lower volume? And it's usually the higher volume that sounds better.
Yeah, and then you have like your tone set exactly perfect, then you actually take it to a gig and they're like, oh, you can only turn up to 1, and you're like, no.
Yes. Yeah, so that's been kind of the bane of all guitar players since the beginning of time, is that it sounds so much better when you turn things up. The tubes open up, the speakers open up, your guitar resonates more when it's getting fed back from the amplifier. So there's this like relationship with your amp and your guitar, and when it's turned up, it just sounds better. So TC, you're not running into anything that everybody has not run into before. So it's a common problem. So what to do? Well, freaking turn it up. Turn it up.
Crank it.
And just tell whoever's telling you to turn it down to you know, put in some earplugs or something. But yeah, turning it up is going to help. Also, you know, one thing about a multi-effects processor like this is, so like I have a monitor, and that's so I can hear it here in the studio. Otherwise, if I didn't have that monitor, this is not really an amp. It's an effects processor. It's a multi-effects unit, if you will. So just like having a pedal without an amp isn't going to do much for you. So it needs something to amplify the sound. That's why I have a powered monitor of a Friedman that's specifically made for this kind of setup. And shit, if I didn't forget what I was going to say. Where was I going with that?
You can turn it up more, maybe?
Oh, that's what it was. It's this. It's that where you have to turn up an amp to get that sound. With a multi-effects processor, you literally can have the headphones on, and it pretty much it just sounds the same anywhere you're at. It's consistent. Yeah, so you're just turning. I still blast this in my headphones anyhow, because I just like things loud. Yeah, but it's not going to lackluster like you're talking about when you're running it through like the board like we are right now, or your headphones, or in the case of a monitor here, I don't run into that as much as if I was just using like a tube amp. So it is a little bit different, but I still like it loud, because I mean, it's moving air, and there's certain frequencies that, especially like the lower frequencies, that you're just not gonna feel unless that speaker is moving the air around you. Okay, that's why a lot of people don't like units like this, especially like old school guitar players, is because they're like, man, it's not moving me. It's not moving the air around them. So they like a nice, you know, basement cabinet where those 412 cabinets are throwing air and hitting you, and it's like it's a feel. Okay, it's not like pushing you literally, but it's a feel that's different than running through smaller speakers. All right, great questions today, friends. Okay, so MT Antiques is saying, hi, a Fender Mustang 1 V2 cheap 20 amp with 24 presets and hundreds more online. Any thoughts on it? Have you used that amp before?
I haven't, no.
I've heard lots of things about it. So there's a lot of people coming out with, or that have come out with these already. This happened a few years ago where folks were coming out with these real small practice amps that were really cheap and solid state, lots of effects built into them. And my thought on them is they're great. They're way better than the first amp that I had. I wish that I had these now, but they are what they are. If you're spending, you know, $200 for it, it's that kind of amp. You're not going to gig with it unless it's a really quiet gig. They're not very loud. They're just made for practicing, and you get way more bang for the buck than you did back in the 80s and 70s buying these little amps, right? So there's so much more to them now. So I think they're really great. But as far as like doing a gig, being professional, what have you, it's not to say you couldn't do a gig, maybe a song with it in the studio or something, but like for doing real gigs and doing real studio stuff and playing in a band, it's not going to work. You need something louder, you need something more versatile, and typically it's more money. At the end of the day, it's just more money. That's why that's why one guy's going to buy a $200 amp and go, I've got a great amp, and this guy's buying a $2,000 amp. There's definitely a difference. David's saying, that reminds me, did you get your custom pedal ever completed? So we just got version 2 Haley, I don't know if I told you this, but we're having a pedal made. Yeah,
That's
and
exciting.
It's very exciting. This has been in the works now for, gosh, I feel like over a year. Mark from Kurtronics, you can see him up online, is creating this pedal for me. And basically what I wanted to do is I wanted to marry an OCD-ish pedal. Oh, look. Thank you, bud. Nice. Look at this. You guys get the first look at this pedal. Can you put it on this cam there, Chris? There you go. Let's see if I can get that. Yeah, it's kind of in focus.
That's
so there you
legit.
go. It's called the Dueling Ninja. And basically there's two sides to this pedal. I know it's not very focused in there, sorry. But basically you see there's two sides to it, one button. And essentially, that's all right, Mike, that's all I'm going to do right there. So essentially you've got two sides to it. Thank you, bud. And two of my favorite overdrive pedals are the OCD and a Tube Screamer. And there's things that I love about them, like lots of things that I love about them, and just a couple things that I don't like about them. And what we did is we changed the things that we didn't like about it. It's our own circuitry, so we didn't take anything from those guys, but it's a tip of the hat, if you will, to those two really cool pedals. And we have some extra bells and whistles in there. It's only one button, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to switch back and forth, so between the kind of Tube Screamer-esque mode and the OCD mode, so you can bop back and forth between the two or take it out completely. Thank you. And yeah, as soon as we get one of these, I'll get you one.
Ooh, okay? Thank you.
When we know that they're right, we're working on version 3 right now. It's got a modern classic switch, a high-low switch, so it's got other things that those pedals don't have. And then the really cool thing is, so you've got two different overdrives, you've got your clean tone, and then you can also pair them. So just like Haley was doing, where she said she had two overdrives together. Why do you do that, Haley?
I do it to stack, so I can easily just kind of increase my like drive level and just really quickly just like step it on.
Yeah.
Changes the tone a little.
Yeah, and so when you take one drive into another drive, it creates a unique sound. And so that's basically what we did with this. So you're playing along, doesn't matter what mode you're in, you can literally hold the button down and it flips into this whole other mode, which puts these two in series. And so then you can really let the guitar sing. So basically it's gonna create at least 3 tones for you on stage, and as opposed to just one. So pretty cool. That's what we were going for. And the space of it is smaller than some of the pedals that are out now. A little bit bigger than the single, but yeah. Thanks so much for asking about that. And I promise you, you guys are going to know about it when it comes out. So someone has the Digitech Trio. Do you have one of those? Have you seen those?
I don't have that.
They're really cool.
I've seen them, but
yeah. So the Digitech Trio is something that basically you can play a chord progression. It's listening to you, and it's like, oh, you mean this? And then it'll add a drummer and a bass player. And it's pretty cool.
So cool.
Yeah, and you can change it up some too, but it's a looper, allows you to play into it, and then it adds the bass and the drums intelligently. Pretty cool.
That's really cool.
All right, so is a lasso pedal the same as a looper pedal? You know anything about that? A lasso pedal?
I don't know about a lasso pedal.
I've never heard of that. So, yeah.
I know it's called a switcher sometimes, a looper, but
yeah.
I don't know about lasso.
I should be calling it a switcher, because realistically, that's just, yeah. What is the number of songs, breaks, and length of an average gig so I can start to include in my practice to build stamina to play live gigs? Oh, well, luckily, we have Haley Powers in the house, because she's gigging all the time these days. Not me so much anymore. I'm an old man, and I just teach now. So what's the number of songs and breaks? So how often do you play? You play with a few different artists around town.
Yeah, played with a few different ones, and it just really depends on the gig type. So I would say, like right now, I play maybe once a week, once or twice out a week, and it really just depends on what kind. So like right now, I would say probably average is 2 hours gigs, and that's about, I want to say 30 to 40 songs. Maybe that's 40 songs. I can't remember how many is on the set list, but yeah. So like usually we'll get a 15-minute break in between the 2 hours, and then for playing somewhere like downtown, more of like Broadway or like a club or a bar situation, some of those those can be 4 hours, which that seems really intimidating, but like once you start just going through the songs and like charting them or whatever you need to remember, it's actually not that much. Like it kind of builds on itself. So like what I've done recently, I've finally got an iPad, about time, and it's been so helpful. So like right now I'm working on a 40 song like set list. And so basically I'm just going through charting all of them in my iPad. I have a couple different apps that makes it really easy. And then I'll basically after that just kind of build them, and then I can organize them in another app by set list. So I hope that helps answer it. But yeah, I would say like if you even get like an hour of music like down, you can find a good gig somewhere.
Yeah.
Or even 5 songs if you're playing like writer's
And
night.
how often do you have breaks then?
Let's see. I would say usually every hour if it's like a 2-hour gig. Well, like I guess in between those 2 sets. And then if it's a 4-hour gig, I feel like usually you can play for 2 hours and have a break. But it just kind of depends too on the venue and who you're playing with.
Yeah, an hour is usually what people are going for because people start getting squirrely after about an hour. You're like, all right, let's bring on the next act. Unless they're just slaying it. So, yeah, usually I've found usually an hour. I used to the last band I played with, we did 4-hour set. I guess that wouldn't be considered a set, but we did, we prepared 4 hours of material, and it was usually about 60 songs.
Yeah.
But we had a break in there too.
Yeah. And are you going to be playing with your daughter?
So every now and then, if she calls me out for a gig, I'll do one with her, which I think is super cool that would allow me to be on stage.
I loved your guys' song.
Oh, thank you.
So good.
Yeah, that was all her, but like I did guitars on that, and then she had one of the guys from Cage the Elephant. Right?
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Had one of their guitar players out to do the other guitar parts.
Oh my gosh,
it
was a
really
bop.
cool.
If you guys haven't heard it,
love it. Glad that you liked it. Yay. All right, string gauges. Depending on the style and such, blues, rock, folk, is there a particular size string for certain styles of music you play? What do you play, Haley?
Right now I play with a 10 on top, 10 gauge, but sometimes I'll do the lighter. I like to play with as light of strings as I can, but with my Jaguar, those typically like you have to play with heavier strings. So in those cases, I play with like the 11 gauge on top. So,
It's a longer scale?
It's actually, I think it's actually a little bit shorter of a scale, but there's an extra fret, I think, or vice versa.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like different, and the neck angle is slightly different. There's just like a lot of differences in my Jaguar.
Yeah.
So that one, like I had to play with heavier strings just because it buzzes if I don't. But yeah, normally I do 10 on top.
Okay. Yeah, so, and really that is completely individual. Again, people will ask best, which you didn't. Thank you, Alan. It's not, there's no best, right? It's like Billy Gibbons, who's played rock, blues, guitar for, my God, I don't know how long, 50, 60 years. And he plays 8s. So, or maybe even 7s, which I've never played. I don't even know if I've played 8s.
I don't think I've seen those.
Yeah, 7s. So 7s are really thin. Stevie Ray Vaughan, who's also was a pretty badass player, himself would play 13s at times. So almost double the thickness. So it really doesn't matter. It's like what's comfortable for you. That being said, on my Strats I'm using, or on my Fenders, I typically use like a 9 through like 42. And then for my Gibsons, I'll usually do like 10 through 46-ish. I'm not completely obsessed with certain gauges. I can understand why some people are like virtuosos, because they're constantly playing.
Right.
And then they go for a lick, and if it's even at all sounding off, they're like, ah, man, I tried to bend that and I overbent it or whatever, and I get that. So like the higher level of a guitar player you are, and what I mean by that is just like how often you're playing, how consistent you are. The more consistent you are as a player, if you're playing 8 hours a day and gigging every single night, then chances are you're going to be more susceptible to certain string gauges being what you like, because you've kind of gotten to this upper echelon where you need that consistency all the time. as opposed to somebody like me who's doing lots
Like
of
me.
teaching and lots of videos and what have you, and playing lots of different guitars. Like, to me, I'm just like, I'll make it work type of thing. But it's not gonna sound like John Bonamassa either. So, okay. Oh, yeah. Is there a reason this broadcast isn't on Facebook? Yes. Facebook doesn't allow us to post to YouTube and Facebook at the same time anymore. Yeah, Zuckerberg issues. Thank you, Subskip. Okay, what's up with those super expensive, wore-out looking guitars like 89 Fender or whatever? Are they expensive because they are old, or are they new but old looking? So that's, you know, that's called relicking, and that became a thing. I don't know how long ago now. It's been a while, but it became a thing maybe a decade ago, 15 years ago, something like that. People wanted guitars that looked and felt like they had been played before. You know what I mean? They just look cool. And I think also having guitar players like John Frusciante and other players out there who were playing legitimately old guitars. This is a 65, so it's not wore out,
so cool.
But you can see like the pick guard and what have you is that kind of mint green. It used to be white, and it's just faded because of UV rays. And so people go, wow, I like that look of that old guitar, so now people are manufacturing that. And typically when they do that, it's more expensive. There's more things they got to do to the guitar, and they make it feel better and a little bit worn out on the neck and stuff. So even though it looks beat up, it's not. It's just they do all that purposely. So that's why you're getting that. But if you're a person who likes the new guitar, right? Just do that. Do you like the kind of the worn-in look?
I want, like, this is like, I feel like the dream guitar
Yeah.
here. I want mine's like a reissue, so I don't have the real deal yet, but I would really want like an actually old guitar. My dad has like a 72 Telly that I'm always like, oh, can I just borrow it for a little?
So did your dad get you into playing?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
My dad is like so good, so he like kind of took me under his wing as a kid and helped me start playing and stuff. Probably like your daughter.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Does he live here?
No, he's in California.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Him and my mom have a band now.
Oh, I love that. Hold on, I think we've talked about that before. Yeah. What kind of stuff do they play?
They call it alt country.
Oh, I love alt
So it's
country.
like
Yeah,
a lot
so
of like Emmylou
Mavericks
Harris.
and-
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
I love that stuff. Yeah. Love it. Mary Beth is asking, what apps do you use, Haley?
Okay. I'm assuming that's probably for the like charting and stuff, maybe?
Yeah, maybe get a little bit more specific on that, Mary Beth. But yeah, just for music in general. So I see you doing lots of looping, but you say you don't have a looper pedal, right?
No.
So how are you doing that?
I'm just doing that all in Logic. So I'll like do a video of me like playing it into Logic, and then I'll just do the next video of me like playing on top of that and just kind of keep going. As far as iPhone apps, ones that I really like for like keeping my chord chart straight, there's one called One Chart. And it's like the actual like number one, and that chart is awesome, or that app. I want to say you have to use it on an iPad, but it's in the number system. But you can switch the keys really easily. Actually, no, you can do it with just like the letter chords, and basically you can just chart all of your music, and it like stores them in there. You can have different folders. And then I'll switch them into this sounds complicated. I'll switch them into another app called Fourscore once I'm actually like playing. Yeah, and you can like swipe through it and make little notes on there. They are just such lifesavers because it's hard for me to sometimes keep everything straight.
Yeah.
So those are the main ones I really like.
I love that. All right, so Mike is saying, Eric, I have a line 6 looper, something 4, a 4 button that does a bunch of stuff. I've lost interest in it. Do you want it? Play with it and then give it away maybe. Sure, Mike, I would be down with that. But honestly, keep the looper pedal, because like you may be bored with it today, but you're gonna want one tomorrow. You gotta have a looper pedal. Keep it. But if you really don't want it, I would definitely take it off your hands and we could do a giveaway or whatever you wanted to do with it, for sure. Would love that. That's really cool. All right, we're gonna bop up here just a little bit. I think guitars should earn their wear, as that tells the story of their life, whereas relic guitars are lying about their history. That's not a lie. But you know something? It's like these old guitars are very, very expensive. And if you don't want to gig with a very expensive guitar, or you don't have the money for a very expensive guitar, it's kind of a nice touch to do. You know what I mean? So, yeah. All right, good. Looking for another question where you're all caps and a question mark, okay? Someone's asking about the guitar. So Mike picked up the guitar yesterday. I'll have to show you this, Haley. We got the guitar that we've been like talking about for probably a year and a half now, but I've had a custom guitar made, and Mike just picked it up yesterday, and it is beautiful, and it plays amazing. And so, but I haven't really I literally just started messing with about an hour before the broadcast, so it's done. At least that one's done. So we got some things to figure out before we start saying, hey, we're going to sell these and all the rest, but it's pretty amazing. It looks boss, so I'm very excited. Okay, Behringer Digital Effects FX 600 Multi-Effects processor from this. Okay, sorry, you guys are talking amongst yourselves there. All right, I'll tell you what, we're just going to scroll to the bottom. Any other ones that pop up, we'll get to those before. I'm just kind of searching down here. Hi, Haley, are you going to do more stuff with Bailey James and Mia Morris?
Oh, yes. Actually, I am literally going to a rehearsal with them tonight. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, we have a gig coming up somewhere in Mississippi. But yeah.
What kind of style music is that?
It's like country, I would say. Country rock. Bailey's the singer and Mia's the drummer, and Bailey's just started getting into like doing more like Nirvana and different things like that. So who knows what way it will go.
Oh boy, okay. Beautiful. Okay, just bought a big muff and not sure where to place it in the chain. I play lead rhythm. So Bobby, usually any sort of fuzz pedal is going to go closer towards the front of the chain. So like with your overdrives, with your distortion pedals. That being said, the fuzz pedal, which I've only owned a couple in my life, and not with the wah. I didn't use it with the wah, but my understanding is that I believe, let me think about this for just a second. The wah usually goes in front of the overdrive, but I think with some fuzz pedals, you want to experiment with putting it before the wah, if you're using a wah at the same time. So experiment with that. That's the one pedal that you can move around there in front or in back of the wah, but it just depends on that individual one as well. Okay. All right, so while we're waiting for more questions, don't forget to go, whoa, someone just donated $20. Roy Morin. Thank you, Roy. So kind of you, my friend. Just a hello and thank you. Hope the family is well. Shout out to Melissa. Love when she lets you play with her. Yes, and she'll be coming out again. Haley, welcome and good to see you. Oh, beautiful. Aww. Thank you so much, Roy. Super kind. So don't forget to visit Haley Powers Music on Instagram, and where else?
And YouTube now.
And YouTube now, yay!
Just started YouTubing.
I love it, good girl. All right, excellent. Okay, here's another question here, but I have probably some questions for you here as well. You both have rosewood fretboards. Is it better than maple ones to play with a wider range of tones? Do you have anything to say about that? Oh gosh,
I don't know, because I have.
You have both.
I have both. Yeah. And I like both of them. Yeah. Honestly, like, I'm trying to think about the tone differences. You probably have better things to say. I haven't noticed, I guess.
If someone handed me a guitar with a maple neck or a rosewood neck or an ebony neck, I wouldn't know the difference unless I just looked down, right?
Just the color, really.
I wouldn't know, because technically when you're playing, you're really not playing, you're not touching the fretboard. If you're playing properly, you're kind of like on your tiptoes, you're on your fingertips playing on the strings. So you may feel that neck a little bit, that fretboard or fingerboard a little bit. That being said, I think they say that maple is a brighter sound. But, to me, when people say that, it's like it would have to be in a vacuum. You'd have to have the same exact guitar same year, with the same exact pickups, wound the same exact many times, with the same pots and the same volume, into the same cable, into the same effects, and then it gets ridiculous where you're like, okay, well, it may sound a little bit brighter, a maple neck may sound a little bit brighter, but again, I go back to when I was a kid, if I wanted a certain sound, I figured it out. So I was like, well, it's too bright, so I'd turn down my tone, or if that, made the sound not what I was looking for, I would turn down the tone on my amp. Or I'd figure something else, some other way to make the sound what I wanted.
Right.
So I think technically maple is brighter, but at the end of the day, don't be like, oh, I don't like bright sounds. You got to take the whole guitar and your whole rig, the microphone that's miking it and everything into consideration, because all of that has to do with your tone. All right. Mary Beth is saying, hi Haley, nice to see you again. I have long hair like you. I usually put it up when I play guitar. Does your hair get caught in your guitar?
Oh my gosh. I feel like my hair just gets caught everywhere. I'm constantly shedding on everything. But yes, a few times it has, especially just like right here. So I just like tuck it behind. So me and you, Mary Beth.
Yeah. Yes. I used to have really, really long hair.
Really?
Like down to my waist.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I don't remember it ever getting
Grow it back.
Yeah, I know, right? My mom literally, you know how moms are, where they're just like, oh, you were so cute back then. And they're just like, why don't you
What
have that same
happened?
haircut
Yeah.
that you had in 1987? I'm like, Mom, Jesus, I'm not going to do that. It's ridiculous.
I vote do it.
Every now and then I'll post one online, and they're pretty ridiculous with a blue lame jacket that I got from the Junior Miss department at J.C. Penney's. It was the 80s.
J.C. Penney's, yeah.
The 80s,
Those were the days.
Yeah. What is your desert island rig?
Oh.
Do you have a desert island rig?
Oh gosh, okay.
Probably what you have, what you're using,
what I
right?
have. Yeah, this is not even too big. I would say I really like my Vox AC15. I'm maybe going to switch to the hand-wired 10. And then I would say...
Can you hear a difference between the two?
Okay, the hand-wired one, I've only played the hand-wired 15, but I heard a huge difference from the hand-wired
really?
compared to
Yeah.
my normal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get this. It was nice.
What was the difference? What did you like about it? Was it clearer?
Yeah, it sounded like just
More
clearer.
dynamic?
Yeah, and it just it felt like a little bit more like punchy, I guess, or something. But it just felt like, I guess it sounded more professional. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, it just sounded so good.
And I think it's one of those things too. Like I was talking with, I don't know if it was Jeff or RJ or who I was talking to the other day, but we were talking about this, that sometimes, the difference between those two amps, if you were playing on stage and other people were listening, they may not hear the difference.
Yeah.
But you hear the difference. It makes you feel more confident. You're like, oh, my tone's great.
Yes.
That little thing that we did at the top of the program, I didn't like my tone. And I didn't have the time to dork with it. But it's like I didn't like my tone, and it's just like you're playing and you're like, yeah.
You're distracted
but you're
the
just
whole
so
time.
distracted the whole
Yes.
time. I'm like, I'm sucking, this sound sucks. So
Oh, yeah.
it happens to
I
to
totally
most.
feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, too, that would be so nice to have the consistency of the Kemper. But yeah, I would say also the Blue Sky, Strymon, the Reverb, and then my compression pedal. I have the Keeley Electronics one. Those two I pretty much leave on all the time, and then the rest I'll kind of add on top.
Yeah.
But my Desert Island rig would be a lot heavier to haul around than this guy. So
Yeah.
I would rather have this.
Yeah, indeed. And I think for me, my Desert Island rig is this amp and my new guitar, because I specifically, and it's not tweaked out yet, but honestly, that I specifically had that guitar designed and built to answer a lot of the questions or a lot of the desires that I had in several guitars that I have, to put them all in one. Not the first guy in the world to want to do something like that either, right? But it fits for what I want to do. So that would be my ultimate, my Desert Island setup. That's a great question. Okay, yeah, rosewood is warmer in the nuances, Charles is saying. So Charles probably is a luthier, or he knows what he's talking about. So Mary Beth, I have some of those pictures of my long hair on Instagram. You'll have to stalk that a little bit. There's some Yeah, there's some.
I feel like I've seen one of those.
Yeah, yeah, they should have been burned years ago. Do you find that the multi-effects works better through a PA or through a guitar amp? That's a great question. So, you know, it really just depends. They're realistically, they're just a pedal board, okay? It's just that you get more for your money because it's basically a software program in a box with a bunch of menus and switches and buttons and that sort of thing to get you where you want to get to. Whereas modular units, like Haley has here, is mechanical, you know, so you press a button and it literally engages something that will either bypass the signal or not bypass the signal depending on the pedal. And analog pedals, it's going through circuitry, so actual circuitry, as opposed to going through a software program. This is all software. It's literally doing everything through software, which back in the day they were trying this and not with the best results in the world. Now it's just absolutely ridiculous what you can do with software. So you can think about a multi-effects processor unit as just a pedal board. It's not really, doesn't prefer a guitar amp or a PA. That being said, kind of the higher, not the higher echelon units, but most multi-effects processors now have some sort of amp emulation in them. And what that means is they purposely make it sound like it's going through, you know, an AC-15 with this, you know, with the Jensen speaker or whatever. And you can program that all in, and it's doing all sorts of stuff with dynamics and EQ and what have you to emulate that. So you wouldn't want that emulation going through your amp because the amp's already coloring the tone. What I mean by color is if Haley's used to a certain sound with her AC-15 and then she plugs into my Fender Blues Junior here, even though they're both amplifiers and they both have tubes and speakers and everything else, they're going to have a certain sound that's different, right? You plug it into this, can you hear a difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, just there's a certain sound that you know what to hear, and then it's not the same. So when you're talking about a multi-effects unit that has emulation, yeah, going through the amp is going to give you the purest sound because it wants to be fed into something that has the whole dynamic range, as opposed to a guitar speaker which doesn't have a full dynamic range. Cool? Hopefully that answers that question. Hi Haley, you still planning on a trip to Europe?
Oh, good question. Yes, I am. I actually just bought my plane tickets. I'm so excited.
What? Is that your first time?
I went once to Ireland in high school.
Oh my goodness.
So a long time ago.
Yeah.
So going to Barcelona, I'm very excited. And then I'm actually going to Ireland again. So my husband and I are doing a greatest hits trip
of
like our favorite places. I've only been one and he's been a bunch. So
oh yeah, that's great.
I had the one to choose.
Good, right.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Oh, so fun. So fun. I want to go back.
Are you going back anymore?
No, we have no plans right now because we've, you know, our little guy's 4.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Which actually that could be super fun.
You could bring him along.
But like, would he appreciate?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
You know, Greece.
It's a long plane flight.
Yeah. Oh, that too. So yeah, because there's nothing worse than a poor kid who's got an ear pain on a flight on a 10-hour flight.
That's the worst.
All right, Oliver's saying, hi, I bought a used Strat HSS, which for those of you that don't know what that is, that's a humbucker single-single as opposed to regular Strat is single-single-single. A humbucker produces that kind of big rock tone, you know, angry, type of sound, right? Before I knew much about single coils. I feel I can't quite get the Strat twang. If I get another Strat with single coils, will it be that much different? Oliver, probably not. It could be that, you know, it could be your setup. It could be the way that you're using the pickups. You know, for me, what I like to do is I love, now these old Strats were just they're just a 3-way switch. They were not 5-way. So you just had 3, but then what players would do is they'd figure out that they could kind of sneak in between 2 of these, and then they get that kind of, as opposed to, which probably can't hear much of a difference, but. So right. And so if you have a 5-way switch, then putting it on number 4 gives you that kind of spanky type sound. But really, 3 and 5 will do the same. As you start getting into 2 and 1, which is closer towards this sound, it's more just like lead guitar type of tonality. So it's a little bit more of that kind of spanky type sound probably that you're looking for. And if not, then I would say if you can try out a few different strats through your setup, that may be a good idea, because then you can figure out what is the problem. Yeah, especially if you're a newer player and you kind of don't know what to look for. That'll help out a lot. Mike Rooney says, I have a Marshall Code 100 that has an input for a pedal string 2. Is that overkill? Input for a pedal string. I think you probably mean like a looper, an effects loop. I don't know what you mean by pedal string. So if you mean a loop, like an effects loop, then it's not overkill. It's just another way of doing things. You can put the effects before the amp, or you can put them in the loop. So, but if you don't know, if it's something different, let me know. All right. What's your opinion between a crate amp and a Line 6? You have anything to say about that, Haley?
I don't.
Yeah,
no.
So crate amps, like historically, are kind of more affordable amps. So nothing wrong with them. I think I've owned a few. Definitely owned a few in my day, especially the practice amps. They actually sounded pretty cool for a little practice amp. But I don't think there's probably a comparison if they're still making what they're making. Line 6 is just like set the bar for some really cool tonalities, and usually they emphasize more like on modeling as opposed to crate, which I don't think they do that. I think it's just an amp, unless things have changed. I don't know. Do you like the Fender acoustic? If so, what is it you like about Fender acoustic guitars? Have you tried Fender acoustics?
I think I've tried one before, but I haven't owned one.
Yeah. Do you have any weigh in on that?
I honestly can't really remember that much trying it. I don't play one, but I don't know.
Yeah. My gut reaction would be to say that, guys like Martin have been doing it for I think they just celebrated 200 years? I think they celebrated they were making guitars before the Civil War. A long time. So my guess would be they're pretty good at it, and whereas Fender does what Fender does. So
right. I like Taylor and
I love Taylor. Yeah, and they're newer compared to Martin, but they make great stuff too. So that's just my my knee-jerk reaction. But I'm sure there's some great Fender acoustics out there, and I'm sure there's some Lemon Martins too. It happens, So this is a question that we get a lot. Where do you normally set your tone controls? And this is something that is different from every amp to
it so depends.
So for me, I set everything flat, like the Fender Blues Junior that Haley's using right now. Everything's set to flat, so the chicken head knobs are pointed straight up, so that if you wanted some more of something, you could go in either direction. How do you do it, Haley?
I will either do that, and then sometimes if I'm playing more alternative or worship music that I want it to cut through a little bit more, I'll just turn my tone or my high end up just a little bit, and I'll turn my low end a little bit, and then my middle will just be in the middle, just so it has a little bit more of the punchy sound, but otherwise I just run it just at the top. So.
Yeah, that is a good rule of practice. So even the way I had this amp set, Jeff Duke, who was in here the other day, and he was playing through it. He's used to playing through some other sort of Fender. I forgot what it was, but nonetheless, even where I had the effects, which is basically right in the middle, flat, he's like, does that sound a little bass heavy to you? Which I love that sound of having a little bit of bass hitting my feet and what have you. But that's because right now I'm not playing in a band. But Haley made a point there, and it's really a good point, is that when you're playing with a band, an ensemble, other players, then your tone is typically going to be different. You know, you like a nice big full sound when you're just hearing yourself, but if you have a bass player who's trying to fill up that sound, and then you got a keyboard player who's trying to fill up that sound, and everybody's fighting for the same frequencies, right? And now you really can't hear too much of anything. So a good mix engineer will be like, let's turn down your bass a little bit, or let's, you know, turn up this frequency, turn down that frequency. And you initially may be like, well, I don't like the sound of that, but in the mix, it's going to sound better typically if someone knows what they're doing there. You don't want to be walking on those frequencies.
Right.
That's what you're talking about. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just kind of staying at the top level, since bass and drums and everything typically fills that bottom level, just kind of floated on top.
Yeah. And you might say to yourself, well, why Haley, wouldn't you just turn up the treble and then turn but then what happens is you're so loud that people are like, please turn it down. So you just need your little spot in the mix there, and then you're all good, you know. All right, what would be a good first head and cabinet? Currently using a Champion 40 and want to get away from modeling amps. Caveman Cole. So Caveman Cole, there's so many different options out there. A good first head and cab, I wouldn't know how to really respond to that because I don't know what it is that you're into. But I mean, you know, the standard is a good Marshall.
Yeah.
A good Marshall Plexi. That's what I would go for. But I don't know what you're into, so it really just it depends. There are really cheap lunchbox versions where they're, you know, like 5 watts.
Yeah.
Those are kind of cool. Have you messed with those?
I haven't, but
super
that sounds
cool
fun.
they're super cool, and they even have 1 watt. So now you can, you can turn them up.
Baby.
You know, a 1 watt tube amp, and you can get that sound of a cranked amp, but it's not blowing things away.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so you should check those out if you haven't. Yeah,
That's
1
so
watt or
small.
5 watt. They're really cool. And 5 watts, you'd be surprised at how loud 5 tube watts are. I tell this story that I bought an Epiphone 5 watt head because they were all the rage a few years ago, and I'm like, I gotta try this thing out, and it sounded great. 5 watt, just cheap Epiphone head, and I was like, well, I wonder how loud it is, because when I cranked it, I was like, I could stand by it, but it was loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
a little
definitely
ear-piercing,
wake the neighbors loud. So it was that loud, and I had a 100 watt, or I think it was 100 per side. So I had a stereo unit. I think I just used one side. So 100 solid state watts. And I plugged into both of them separately. And the 100 watt solid state was just a pinch louder.
Oh, really?
Than the 5 watt solid state. So that gives you kind of an idea. If you're looking at practice amps that are solid state, you would know it because your amp doesn't get real hot. There's no tubes that are glowing inside, and typically you can't get a tube amp for less than like $300.
Yeah.
So that's how you would know if you have a solid state amp, and they're just not as loud as tubes, and not as dynamic. So what I mean by that is if you play really lightly, you get a nice cleaner tone, and then when you dig in, it overdrives and it gets louder. It's like the lows are lower and the highs are higher, so you get more dynamic range. That's what we mean by dynamic. All right, good. Just enjoying the content. Oh, thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you Haley, for being with us. Thank you for Eric, for the crew, for the great broadcast. Yeah, the guys are doing an amazing job. Built this killer set, and yeah, we're having a blast here. So, all right, 15 watts is loud enough. I use a Code 15, but it is hooked into a DAW, a digital audio workstation, which is basically how you might record yourself and play back through monitors. Yeah, and remember, Larry, so 15 watts, 15 solid state watts, which the code I'm pretty sure is solid state, is going to be loud for what you're doing, but as soon as you start playing with a drummer, you're going to be like, where did my guitar go?
The worst feeling.
Right? Because it's like the drummer's got to play at a certain volume, and then everybody starts turning up now, and so if you're sitting there with a 15 watt amp, it's not going to be loud enough. Unless they're 15 tube watts, then yes, then you'll probably be fine. So. Well, how about that for some questions? We got some good questions.
Those were some
there,
good
right?
questions.
Yeah, you guys crushed it. Nice job. Haley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
we always
you.
love having you.
I always love it. Thank
Yay.
you guys for
And
letting me be a guest.
Yeah, and we're gonna go grab a bite now. So for all the folks that donated, thank you so much. We really, truly appreciate that, because we really do take that money and we really do go to lunch with it after this. So I'm not just saying that. So thank you for all the folks that donated during Super Chat. The rest of you, to hell with you. No, I'm joking. No, the rest of you, I love you too, and you're amazing and great questions. So please come back. You know, we're always doing fun stuff, new stuff here all the time. Next week, RJ Ronquillo is going to be here. You don't want to miss him. He is a badass player. He's been on before. He's going to be on again, and we're going to tell you, hopefully we're going to be telling you about a slide course that he has available. It definitely won't be available next week, but it'll be available soon. So we'll probably talk about that a little bit. So again, thank you so much, Haley. And guys, thank you so much. And this will be on YouTube when we're done. Make sure you go to Haley Powers Music on Instagram, and also go over to her YouTube and subscribe there. You're doing lessons there, yeah?
I am, yes.
Yay.
Lessons, little vlogs.
Beautiful, beautiful, which, yeah. All right, my friends, you know what to do. I'll see you next week.